All right, it's 6:05. I'll keep an eye out for people jumping in a little later. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Maggie Connor. I'm the president of the Allegheny City Central Association. I'm offered to host this meeting for the city in Domi. This is a follow-up to the in-person meeting we had a while back, guys, at the corner of Jacksonia and Arch Street to talk about some of the issues related to traffic there. As promised, Nick has gone back and crunched numbers and looked at the evaluations of traffic behaviors and has a bit of a presentation for us today to talk through what they found. So with that, I'm going to turn it over actually to Hirsch and Nick. You guys, this is your meeting to lead, and just let me know what I can do to help facilitate as we move along. All right.
Quick question, Margaret.
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Will we be recording this for other folks, or is it being recorded?
It is being recorded. I will follow up with Nick and Hirsch afterward about the best way to make that available for people. But we are recording it.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Worst case scenario, you send them to my house and we'll replay it for folks.
Thank you for that intro, Maggie. And also thank you to Hirsch for joining us tonight. Hirsch, out of the Office of Community Affairs, is going to be around to help direct questions and also take some notes towards the end and as questions come up. As Maggie said, I'm Nick Ross. I am the Chief Traffic Engineer for the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, also a Northside resident of the Ward Streets neighborhood. So good to see a lot of familiar names and faces once again. Maggie, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share screens, slide deck. If you can give me a heads up or a verbal yes when you see the.
We have success. We have success.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, everybody. I tend to talk fast, and so if anybody needs me to slow down or say something again, butt in and give me a holler. Otherwise, these tend to work a little bit better if you can either log your questions in the chat or hold them on to the end, and we can take care of any questions and answers then. Starting out, you are here for the Jacksonia Street traffic calming presentation. We are here to discuss findings from our traffic calming study that we've undertaken in the department and present our next steps on how to mitigate some of the issues that we found. Starting off with a few slides that are going to be sort of a general overview of our traffic calming program, looking at what are the goals and objectives of traffic calming for us here in the city. First and foremost, we're looking to create safe and attractive streets that reduce the negative effects of motor vehicles on the environment. That's both physical environment and also us socially within that environment. And we're looking to promote pedestrian, bicycle, and transit use through these changes to our streets. So this is really all for the intent of making it safer for folks to get around by whatever means they have and need on all of our local residential streets. How do we go about doing that, accomplishing that goal? We're looking in these projects to reduce motorist speed and or volume. So the speed and volume relationship is one that's going to be touched on a number of times in this presentation. And we're going to do that by creating what we call self-enforcing streets. Streets that operate as they feel they should. So as you're driving down our street or you're walking or biking down our street, we want you to be able to use the street as it's intended through the design that we put out on the street. So this is the goal here is that we don't have to have or frankly need officers sitting at every single corner on every single block, making sure that everybody's following the rules completely. Talking a little bit about the evolution of our traffic calming program. So it was only back in 2019. I came on board with the department earlier this year. So this is going back a bit before my time, but it's only in 2019 that we were ever given the okay, to be frank, to install our first traffic calming projects as pilots. And these were a series of temporary speed humps on Grandview Avenue. They went off without a hitch. They became very popular, and so in 2020 we put in a resident application-based process where we really kind of crowdfunded, if you will, or crowdsourced, if you will, where these kind of interventions would be not only needed, but wanted, quite frankly. Again, this is back in the time where we really had never done this kind of thing as a city. And so we kind of put it up the hive mind and put a process in place where, a resident could collect signatures from a block that then more or less correlated with an approval for us to come in, study the area, and put in whatever traffic calming measures we saw fit. That quickly became one in which we were overwhelmed with applications based on the amount of funding that we had to actually develop projects. And so last winter, we revised the process once again in order to put in what we call an engineering and equity prioritization process. And then we also updated the application process itself to remove the signatures, one on account of the fact that, unfortunately, we put this process into place during the middle of a pandemic. And two, to remove the barrier to entry for the program. One thing we found with the application-based system that required signatures is that they almost exclusively came from some of our wealthier neighborhoods that were a bit more stable and had better means of connection between residents and with services such as ours. And so in order to sort of take out that barrier to entry for the program, we went ahead and made it more of an inclusive one that had a little bit easier of a process to get through. And then we also matched that with our engineering and equity prioritization to develop the projects that are getting put in place this year. Looking a little bit at that, the engineering and equity prioritization process, I feel it's important for everybody to understand how we come to the decisions we get to. We first start with what we call an eligibility screening. So when we get an application, we have a staff engineer go through and first look to make sure it checks all of these boxes. City-owned street, two-way with maximum 2 lanes or one-way with maximum 1 lane, that it's a local collector or minor arterial, and the grade of the street, so how steep it is 13% or less. These are all really kind of high-level criteria, and streets outside of these bounds really are quite frankly, your higher-level streets that aren't terribly appropriate for the traffic calming measures in this neighborhood context that we really developed the program for. So once your application passes the initial screen, we go out and we collect volume and speed data. That's in order to pass the application once again through a speed threshold screening. The metric that we use to identify if the speed of a street is high enough to warrant traffic calming is what we call the 85th percentile speed. And we require it to be 5 miles per hour or greater over the existing speed limit, so over the statutory speed limit, in order to be eligible for traffic calming. This is a number, this 5 miles per hour number is actually half as much as the state suggests in their traffic calming manual for a project to be eligible. They typically suggest that an 85th percentile speed of 10 miles per hour or greater warrants traffic calming. We're looking to be significantly more aggressive in how we calm our streets and make them safer for our residents. And so we've chosen that lower bound of 5 miles per hour as our target. Another thing to notice here is data sources. We do, on account of the number of requests that we get, now we are up to over 200 for this year alone. We really have to look to use whatever data sources and big data, if you will, possible in order to speed the process. One service or one process that we use is what's called streetlight data. It's one of these big data services that more or less aggregates information from cell phone data. That's anonymous and can't be tracked, but it provides estimates for vehicle volumes, direction, and speed on a street. What we found through this process is that streets with very low volumes tend to have high error bars when using the streetlight data. So a street such as Jacksonia Street, where we know that the volumes are already going to be low, so the number of cars using Jacksonia was going to be on the lower side. We went right out and got radar data. So these are units that we place on utility poles or telephone poles or signal poles in an area and collect the number of cars, the volume of cars, the number of cars, and the speed of the cars as they go past. Once your project passes the speed threshold, then we run it through the additional evaluation that's needed for our engineering and equity prioritization. The engineering piece runs on a scale of 1 to 100. We have 5 different categories and criteria that we analyze for each application, adds up to a score, and then gets logged in our prioritization matrix and compared against applications from across the city in order to determine what is most needed to be funded. We also match that with an equity score that we base off of basically, using this as an opportunity for us to be able to better manage where our assets, our resources are applied. So once we develop the engineering score, we match that with the equity score, and from there, our project list is selected. Once we get into the design phase of a project, we look at what speed mitigation strategies we have to lower that 85th percentile speed down to something closer, hopefully at or below the regulatory speed limit. We separate these into two categories, what we call horizontal deflections and vertical deflections. Horizontal deflections, the deflection word in itself speaks to our intent to physically force the driver to adjust their position as they drive. So a lot of the research and case studies around traffic calming find that these active interventions are really the primary driver of change in behavior. So signage and pavement markings alone have been found both outside of the city and in our own data collection ourselves to be relatively minor agents of change, if you will. And so at this point where we're at culturally, we really have to accomplish some sort of physical movement of the driver in order to get them to pay attention a bit more, slow down, and control that speed. Vertical deflections tend to be what we have our most success with. We see roughly about a 6 mile an hour change in both median and 85th percentile speed. This is based on, I believe, we're over 20 speed hump projects that we've put into place over the last 2 years now, and over 70 total speed humps that combined to create those projects. A couple numbers that I want to focus on a bit here. One, first and foremost, 6 miles per hour of change is very good. The after data, though, looking at the absolute or median speed and 85th percentile speeds down at 22 and 26 miles per hour. One thing we are seeing with a lot of our projects is that it's difficult to get very much below that 22 to 25 mile per hour range for what your median and your 85th percentile speed on a street can be controlled with traffic calming, even our most aggressive features, which are our speed humps. It's a number that we'll hit on in a little bit. The other aspect of traffic calming that we discussed a little bit earlier to match the speed mitigation is what we call volume mitigation. So how do we calm our streets? We get traffic to slow down, and we get less traffic to use the street. A street like Jacksonia, that's exactly where we fall in with this type of project. So a couple strategies that we take when we do volume mitigation. Street network redesign, that's a bit of what we're going to discuss today. So that looks at an entire grid of streets in a neighborhood or an area to make sure that our interventions on one street aren't just making things worse on another, and redesigns the operational flow of traffic through that area in order to accomplish the goal of eliminate what we call cut-through traffic, which is what we're seeing primarily on Jacksonia. Otherwise, we've done turn restrictions, so simply not allowing traffic from a major street to turn onto a minor street. And in a few of the more egregious situations that we're dealing with, we're working to develop traffic diverters, which are more physical, physical changes to the street that preclude vehicles from driving on the path that they once did. Move the conversation now back to Jacksonia specifically. First, we're going to go over some of the activity on this initiative to date. We're all here today primarily because of the illegal speed bump that was installed and then removed the week of May 24th. Up until that point, and I know a lot of folks in the neighborhood have complained about Jacksonia Street for years, But from Domi's perspective, we really use this traffic calming program in order to aggregate all the requests that we get. And so up until that week, we hadn't actually gotten a formal submission for traffic calming on Jacksonia. And that's why there hadn't been really much work to date on the issue. So after we let folks know about that, as of May 26th, our first traffic calming application for Jacksonia Street was received. And within the next 2 days, I believe we received 11 more. And so appreciate you for getting the message loud and clear. That prompted a June 17th community walkthrough that was hosted by many of the folks on this call. That was our community's opportunity to kind of share their concerns, their thoughts, their ideas about Jacksonia Street. We then by June 23rd, we had collected all of our speed and volume data. We used that first community walkthrough meeting and then our speed and volume data collection in order to conduct our speed threshold evaluation and then operational planning throughout the month of July. And here's August 5th when we're, August 3rd. Apologize for not proofreading that one well enough. August 3rd, we're here to discuss the results. Looking at first at the study area, as many folks that were there on the 17th shared with us, the primary issue that we have here is that Jacksonia Street is our only east-west street throughout the central north side between Brighton and Federal that has access fully from one block to the next, or from one street to the next. So all of our other east-west streets have some sort of change in the middle that forces you to turn off the street. Jacksonia is the only one where you can get from one side to the other uninterrupted by operational changes. And that's also why we see by far the highest volume and the most cut-through traffic on this street. The rest of these arrows can be a bit confusing. That's really all just intersection designation for entry and exit from an intersection. And so this kind of lays out as you go up and down Brighton and Federal, how you can get into and out of each block along the way. Looking at the data collection results from our data collection, we'll stay on this slide for a little bit so everybody can have a chance to review. But some of the high-level findings, we measured approximately. So first of all, data collection was taken between June 15th and June 23rd of this year. Our data collection device was located at a mid-block location between Sherman and Garfield Streets. So the goal here, we want to make sure we're getting first and foremost the location of highest volume, and also a location that describes the I don't know if I want to say worst case speed issue, but we don't want to be necessarily too close to an intersection that has stop or signal control, because we know that drivers will either be slowing down or speeding up, or have already been slowed by the stop sign or the traffic signal at the point that we collect. So we want really that mid-block speed that really encapsulates as best as we can what the traffic conditions are for the street. So that's the location we chose. We measured about 780, an average daily traffic of 780 vehicles a day. The median speed collected was 17 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile speed collected was 21 miles per hour. Only about 2% of the motorists that we collected were driving over the 25 mile per hour speed limit, and of heavy interest to me at least. You'll notice if you look at the printouts to the right of the text there, in the box on the upper right, you'll see westbound and eastbound. That eastbound column should have zeros in all of that. That is the direction of wrong way travel on Jacksonia Street in this block. And as you can see, up to 6% of cars throughout the entire day are actually going the wrong way on that block, which is an issue that is as big, if not more than the speeding, that we really want to be able to capture and try to assist controlling in these projects. So as you can see, the speed values that we collected here are rather low for what we see in our traffic calming program. Looking back towards some of the post-construction data that we shared earlier, that even this 85th percentile speed is frankly at the low end that we have been able to accomplish, even with our our most aggressive traffic calming features. And that's simply is frankly because the speed humps that we deploy ourselves are designed to be driven in that 15 to 20 mile per hour range. Below 20 miles per hour, the chances of survival in a crash between a pedestrian and in a vehicle, again, under 20 miles per hour, chances of survival for an adult are between 80 and 90%. As we increase speed up to about 40 miles per hour, that chance of survival plummets to between 10 and 20%. And so managing speeds at or below that 20 to 25 mile per hour range really speaks to the Vision Zero type of design strategy that we take on as the city, and that our goal is primarily to reduce and eliminate severe and crashes that result in severe injury or death. And so we know that we're not going to be able to prevent all crashes. However, we can have an impact in controlling speed of impacted crashes, and that's why those targets are so important. So with our speed humps designed to be traveled at 15 to 20 miles per hour, the types of speeds that we're seeing on Jacksonia simply are low enough that even the speed humps aren't going to be particularly effective. So looking at where we go from there, we took on what we call an origin destination study. So we knew at that point we were going to likely be looking at operational changes to the street to reduce the volume of traffic. What we found in an origin destination study, all that simply means is we estimate of the people that are driving on Jacksonia Street, where they come from and where they're going to. What we found is about 95 to 98% of the trips that happen on Jacksonia Street do not end on Jacksonia Street. So that's a really, really, really important finding. That's more or less what confirms for us and what we heard from you guys in the walkthrough, that Jacksonia Street primarily is used as the cut through. So the people that are driving on Jacksonia Street have really no intention of being on Jacksonia Street, only to get through it. Of those people that are on it, about 75% are coming from Federal Street south of Jacksonia, so northbound on Federal Street. 25% are coming southbound on Federal Street. Of those drivers, about 66% are then continuing their trip northbound up Brighton, and about 33% are continuing their trip southbound on Brighton Road. So that matches pretty closely to where traffic is entering Jacksonia from Federal Street. That pretty much results in this sort of squiggle that represents graphically the general path of travel for drivers on Jacksonia Street. Our goal then is going to be to put into place operational changes that reduce the incentive for that cut through traffic to succeed. Also with the goal, we need to and must maintain access for all residents of Jacksonia Street and a pretty large institutional asset that we have there in the mattress factory. So how are we going to accomplish that? We're going to start by maintaining access westbound from Federal to Arch Street. We're then going to flip the direction of travel from westbound to eastbound between Monterey Street and Arch. And then we're going to eliminate the two-way travel on Jacksonia Street between Brighton Road and Monterey, so that it is westbound only. So flip travel from Monterey to Arch in order to go eastbound. We're going to convert Brighton to Monterey to one-way only westbound, and then in doing so, eliminate the eastbound access at Brighton Road. So looking at that as a before and after, our existing travel, we have two-way access on the block from Brighton to Monterey, and then one-way access westbound from Monterey all the way over to Federal, which is in combination with the two-way stretch, what provides that full through access for cut-through traffic to use from Federal all the way over to Brighton. Our proposed design, we're going to eliminate that two-way movement between Brighton and Monterey. We're going to flip the direction of travel one way from Monterey to Arch, and then we're going to maintain access as is today from Arch to Federal. And so that is the long and short of our preferred option. We have studied several different options here, everything from keeping traffic as it is now, except for taking away the two-way block or the two-way access at Monterey Street. So basically forcing all westbound traffic down to make a left or a right onto Monterey Street. One, this really doesn't cut off most of the reason that people are trying to divert to Jacksonia Street, which is to avoid the North Ave signals. And two, it just kind of takes all that traffic that will still be using the majority of Jacksonia Street, then also dumps it down onto Federal Street. And so we're kind of chasing our tail there. Also looked at an option to basically take that and flip it. So traffic would enter at Brighton Road going eastbound towards the hospital, and then would not be allowed to pass Arch Street. That also we were concerned that still allows traffic to bypass the majority of the traffic signals and just redistributes the cut through traffic down onto Arch Street without really having much effect on Jacksonia. We looked at a more aggressive option to more or less require the block of Jacksonia Street between Monterey and Arch to be accessed only from Garfield. So coming down Garfield or Saturn Way, I should say as well. Garfield or Saturn, you would be able to turn right, but not right or left, but would not have through access. This is the most aggressive one, but also has the most issues with accessibility. So in our preferred alternative, this really reduces most, if not all, opportunity for a driver to bypass the North Avenue signals. It matches a lot of the traffic patterns, but in reverse on some of our other parallel streets, east-west streets through the north side, and accomplishes the goal of maintaining reasonably accessible access to all of the Jacksonia Street residences. So with that, we'll open it up for comments and questions. Who would like to be first?
Well, this is Greg, Shirley Ramsey's husband, and just a quick question and everything. What would be the ramifications of the parking? We've got a stretch here for a couple blocks where we've got parking only on one side because Jacksonia gets that narrow. Will we flip that from one side to the other, or does it stay where it's at, or what? We're talking about, I guess, Saturn back up to from Arch down to Saturn.
So from Arch to Saturn, right now we have not planned any parking revisions. However, if it turns out that parking is more easily done on the opposite side, now that we put these in, we would have no problem doing that. Also, parking revisions have been discussed as possibly a next step. If we're still getting some speeds that are a bit higher than residents like, we can use parking strategies. Basically, instead of having it all along one curb, we can kind of flip it block to block in effectively what we call chicanes out of that kind of requires a driver to weave in and out. We would certainly be open to doing so. We just generally try not to impact parking as much as humanly possible when we do our projects, speaking to experiential examples on past work. So we would certainly be open to parking revisions. That is not what this operational change is looking at right now, though.
Yeah, I mean, the way the parking is currently, if we were just, flipping direction and everything, it would present a bit of an obstacle to the folks that are coming east at that point, because they don't see a clear shot all the way to Arch and Federal. That parking is already presenting a bit of a hindrance visually on the north side of Jacksonia. If it was on the south side, then it provides more of a clear shot visibility-wise coming across on Jacksonia to be able to go shooting straight through to Arch and Federal.
Sure. So with the implementation phase of this kind of first part of the process, it will be generally only signs and maybe some pavement marking. And so at that point, if we want to take that step and change the parking around, we'll be able to do so.
Cool.
Thanks, sir.
Matthew Grebner here.
Matt, how are you doing?
Okay, Nick, I want to say thank you very much for doing this. It's been 25 years of having things be a nuisance, and for you to clear this up so quickly is really astonishing.
Appreciate
And
that, sir.
it's beautiful. I would like to address the parking and the chicanes if in the block between Fireman and Arch on Jacksonia, if we could flip the parking to the south side of the street, that would be another wonderful change.
All right, thank you, sir. Jotted that down. All right. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah,
Nick,
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Arthur. Yeah.
All right, thanks. This is Arthur. I live on Monterey, close to Jacksonia, and I frequently take Jacksonia because the westbound traffic on North is so slow. Can anything be done to speed up the throughput on North in that direction?
Sure, Arthur. So we are right now actually beginning a streetscape and signalization project on North Avenue between Brighton Road and the highway. So our intent there is to take care of as many as we can next year, but start at Federal Street and work our way towards both ends, replacing as many of the signals as we can along the corridor with the funding that we have available to us. The reason we need to change the signals out is because the age of the equipment of all those signals throughout that corridor is one that we have a lot of trouble with from an operational standpoint, and we can't really program to work in coordination with the other signals. So the goal with the North Avenue project is going to be, again, to mitigate some of that speed, some of those speeding issues, while actually working on a better progression of traffic through the blocks, such that you have less stops at lights. So less time stopped at a light, while not actually increasing speeds overall of the street itself. So the goal there is to have this kind of work in conjunction.
Okay. I've noticed a lot of the problem is also cars turning left off of North going westbound, and that just brings everything to a halt, even though the light is green, because they're having to wait for the oncoming traffic.
Sure. Signal, yeah. The where we can, we will provide turn boxes, so left turn boxes for drivers, so that hopefully gets them out of the queue. And at that point, we just kind of have to do our best.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Arthur.
Hello, Nick. This is Shirley Ramsey.
Hi, Shirley.
Hey, I want to thank you again for doing this. I know Greg and I canvassed most of our neighbors on Jacksonia, and 95% were in favor of doing something here.
Sure.
Were you surprised at the amount of traffic that went from Federal to Brighton? Did that shock you? Because I don't think it shocks anybody here on the street.
The amount, I'll say, I did not really expect up to 98%. I'll say that. I was thinking that it was going to be a little bit closer to an even split, but yeah, that was, that's perfect evidence to us that the amount, that the type of traffic using a street is all cut through. And so those are the ones that we really, for the sake of the residents of that street in the neighborhood, we want to try to eliminate that. So yeah, it was, things are it's getting harder and harder to surprise me on that one, but that one, and then also the amount of wrong way drivers. I'll be honest with you, Shirley. We're not seeing that one on a lot of our other projects where we're doing one way streets.
Well,
frankly,
Nick,
yeah.
I'm sorry. During our
Yeah.
call, we just saw one go the wrong way.
Oh my
in
gosh.
front of our
Yeah.
house.
I'll be honest. I had our data collection team go out and do a day of data confirmation. I was concerned that was possibly showing some sort of error in the collection device. Unfortunately, though, that is collecting real wrong way drivers there. When we put these operational changes in, what we're also going to look to do is on some of our one-way projects, we're doing we're installing what we call intersection chokers. So basically, at the intersection, we add some bump outs that really reduce that down to really enough space for one vehicle hopefully going in one direction, and we put some arrows down on the pavement markings just to make sure people know it. And so we're going to try to eliminate those wrong way drivers with this as well, Shirley.
Okay, awesome. Thanks again, Nick.
No problem.
Nick, I have a question. Would there be any chance to just look at with the changes you have proposed for Jacksonia to match Samsonia to the opposite directions? Because it just strikes me what we're going to end up with, especially on Arch, for that first block west of it. You basically can't get to the other side of the neighborhood if you're in the neighborhood. And I know that was one of the changes when the Samsonia direction changes were implemented. There was a bit of, making the lower blocks of like Arch and Redor feel cut off from the rest of the neighborhood. So that's something that I'd like to maybe have looked at. The other comment that I got from the ACCA board when we reviewed the options was just kind of a philosophical question about with the changes to North and with the changes in the park, or just, with the opening of the West Ohio Street Bridge, which we understand is imminent.
Crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
Or just maybe the general question is if those are playing such a huge role in the cut through tendency through here, if this is premature, although I understand the problems are current, but there was just some question about that. If there was
Sure, that's fair, Maggie. I think I'll say that I wouldn't consider it premature. I think that these are changes that would benefit the neighborhood and certainly the residents of Jacksonia Street, regardless of what is going to happen when the switch flips on a number of different things. So not only North Ave in West Ohio, but also then Allegheny Circle renovations as well. I'll say, Maggie, I think I prefer to sort of trial these. Maybe we can even call it a pilot. And if it ends up causing more confusion and harm, I'll certainly be the one to take those on. And then we could have a follow-up maybe sometime next year to talk about if going back to the old way is really best. Seem fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick.
Cool. No problem.
Nick, this is Matthew Grebner again.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm just seeing names here. I know Shirley and Greg. Not sure who else is here, but in the 25 years I've been here, we've been talking about something that's probably never going to happen. But North Avenue, rather than being a signalized stretch there, if we converted that to stop signs,
sure,
that would affect people's use of the different streets. And personally, I think it would be awesome, but I don't know how anyone else feels, and you in particular, how that would affect the overall bigger picture.
Sure. So first of all, four-way or all-way stops are something we very much consider when we do signal projects, and every one of the signals that will be studied on the North Avenue project will be put through signal warrant to make sure that they're justified to begin with. I'll say that on streets with traffic volumes as high as North Avenue, what we find is that even less from a capacity standpoint, but from a compliance standpoint, when the number of drivers get that high, what you see is a tendency to not be quite as kind to those stop signs, and especially to walkers and drivers on the side streets trying to get into and out of North Avenue from there. So oftentimes those signals are needed when that volume gets high enough to kind of control order of operations, if you will, and make sure everybody's kind of following the rules. Any other comments or questions?
Just
another one kind of.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, just calling off of that on stop signs and everything. If this proposal of the shift in directionality and everything, what impact or would there be any changes to the stop sign configuration that we currently have? We got 6 stop signs between Brighton and Arch. I mean, between Brighton and Federal, would there be additional stop signs added in or any taken away?
I don't intend to take any away, that's for sure. If I'm missing something, I live on Monterey, the 1200 block, and so I'm kind of like, you know, driving it myself, if you will. We'll make sure that they're added then for the directional changes that we have, that's for sure. And we'll make sure do not enter an additional signage is added at the blocks and arch in Monterey. But otherwise, I don't intend to add or remove any other than needing what would be needed to do so for the new traffic operations.
Okay, because a plug is always due for Garfield. A plug for stop sign at Garfield. And I'll shut up.
Okay. So is this a request more or less there?
I think that there's a call and cause for having a stop sign at Garfield. The Mattress Factory is right there. Got considerable pedestrian traffic, and it's just an additional calming effect.
I'm going to go ahead and we'll do it. So stop signs also have a warrant analysis that go along with them. Stop signs actually are one of the more highly regulated traffic control signs. And so more or less, you know, you can get a little bit egregious with how many you put out there, and that could turn into a liability for the city and residents. And so we'll go ahead though and do an always stop warrant for Garfield and Jacksonia, just to make sure that you know, if we can put one in, we'll do so.
Okay.
Nick, on that note, one of the things that some of the attendees of the walkthrough in June brought up was stop bars at all of the stop signs throughout the corridor, just to reinforce.
Yeah.
I think especially if we're doing pavement markings right now, I think we should go ahead and do that as well.
It's a great reminder, Hirsch. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Hirsch. That would really be appreciated.
This
Absolutely.
is Shirley Ramsey again. I'm sorry to, we're taking over the show here a little bit with questions.
No.
Crosswalks. There's a crosswalk by Mattress Factory, and I know we're not talking about crosswalks right now, but why, and this is a general question, why do Pittsburghers not stop for pedestrian crosswalks? Help.
So I'll be honest, this is by far the I would say this is by far the most common complaint we get, and it's also unfortunately the one that we can do the least about. So if anybody has you know, I'm always open to hear experiential examples from other cities who've had success doing the kind of things that we're trying to take on. And stopping compliance at stop signs is one of the issues that have very, very, very little from an engineering perspective to be done. You're really talking about what are called geometric improvements there. So where we see things that we can do engineering wise are intersections that either are very big, and so the stop bar is far from the actual crossing of the intersection, or they're skewed, and so that you know, one of the legs comes in at a severe angle, or it's at the crest of a hill, and so sight distance is poor. Those are all geometric changes that could be helped. But when we have a tight street with a plus intersection, stop signs all directions, there's very little that can be done through engineering interventions to get drivers to stop there. And it's really unfortunate, because that's by far the biggest complaint and you know, an error that we get. There's just really little that can be done at that point other than enforcement.
Yeah, and that's where it gets to. And coming from a different jurisdiction to cast input there, yeah, it does require enforcement. And, you know, people get tickets. And if you got a problem with getting a ticket for violating a traffic law, it's optional. You don't have to violate the traffic law. You pay the ticket.
That's correct, sir.
Greg, what does enforcement mean? Is that when someone actually gives you a ticket? When was that?
We are, you know, our police bureau, you know, does often respond that, you know, they are understaffed as well and have trouble kind of making it out to all of our streets in order to do that enforcement. You know, us in the traffic bureau, though, we very much in our monthly meetings that we have with them, we very much pass the message along from our residents. You folks are far from the only ones that are complaining about such things right now. And so as we kind of combine engineering, education, and enforcement all together, that's really the goal here to get that behavior we're all looking for.
I think it's important too, Nick, you made this point before, but that, you know, we tend to see these kinds of behaviors like the faster driving and ignoring stop signs and, you know, and flouting pedestrian rights when traffic is coming from elsewhere and going elsewhere. You know, I think to the goal of getting more of the trips on Jacksonia to be local neighborhood trips, I think we'll see less of that kind of behavior, because you'll recognize your neighbors crossing the street, and you'll see the people you
Cool.
see every day and tend to be more respectful.
Exactly right, Maggie. Yep, that's the goal.
Greg, or not Greg, Nick, I won't steal people's time much more, but you mentioned North Avenue and that you're working on that whole thing. I don't know why you have the walk signals at Cedar and East North, but I think the intersection of Brighton and West North is far more dangerous. And
Sure.
I know people who live on Buena Vista who will not cross at the intersection because of things like left turns. I was almost hit there once myself. So I think if we need anywhere that four-way stop or the four-way red and the pedestrian walk signals, it's there at Brighton and West North.
I appreciate that, Matt, and we're certainly going to be looking at that as part of our study. The reason that it's at North and Cedar right now is sort of a historic precedent.
I like it.
Yeah, with the hospital right there.
Right.
That was a request many years ago, and so
Good. It's great.
yeah, we're going to be looking to do so. The North Avenue project is going to have a pedestrian and transit focus. So the goal there is going to be to calm that street as well. And so, you know, without really, the goal there is very much not going to be to reduce volume. We know that North Avenue has to be the main east-west thoroughfare through the lower north side, in conjunction, hopefully, with the changes that are going to be made on East and West Ohio Street there around the circle. But the goal with North Avenue is going to really be to kind of control traffic down to a place where it is easier for residents to walk from the neighborhood to the park, and as well as along North Avenue. So we're really I'm looking forward to seeing you guys all in those meetings as well. I'm sure, you know, this is a very engaged community. I love serving you folks on the ACC board when I was on it as well. And so definitely going to have those conversations coming up as well.
Yeah, Nick, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Is there any sense of when those rounds of meetings may start up?
Sure. So Maggie, I'm certainly going to be wrong trying to shoot from the hip, but I believe October is when we have our initial public involvement.
We won't hold your feet to the fire on that.
So yeah. I was going to say you can yell at me at the pub, but who knows when that thing's going to be.
Yeah.
But so we have gone
outside your backyard.
Yeah, we've done all of our data collection on North Avenue, and we've had some of our internal kickoff meetings to get the consultant on the right track. Once we're going to give them about a month to develop some of their preliminary information, and then come out to the community for the beginning of that process.
Awesome, great.
All right, so time frame and where we go from here.
Well, if you folks are giving the thumbs up, we'll get these put into work orders probably throughout this month and into contracting. These won't be very large revisions, right? It's just going to be kind of signage and pavement markings. So we'll figure out if our in-house crews can install them. If that's the case, you'll probably see them in place this month. Otherwise, if we have to go out and use contractor, that usually takes 2 to 4 weeks extra. So you know, we'll probably take the next 2 to 3 weeks to put together our formal plan, and then cut that into work orders and go from there. So I'd say within that month to 2 month range, right?
Okay, I had you muted and Shirley gave a woohoo.
Woohoo!
Appreciate it, Shirley.
Nick, and there are hundreds of people who appreciate what you've done who aren't here today. It's been something we've been talking about for 25 years, and there's just going to be so many happy people for
Excellent. I love hearing that, Matt. I really do. You know, when we kind of you know, it's not we don't enjoy having to turn down a traffic calming application, but when we do so, we do like to give the community opportunity to make sure that they're expressing, really the true nature of the problem here. And in this case, that's what we were able to do. We were able to figure out through working with you folks that, some of this cut through traffic was as much, if not more, of the issue. And so we can really kind of come in and do quite honestly, a very low cost change here that's hopefully going to have the intended effect. So very much appreciate everybody's advocacy on the call here and everybody that submitted applications. We'll probably, Maggie, we'll leave about a week or so for folks to kind of, view the presentation, send us comments, questions. I have my email address. Oops, sorry. Oh, I think I came off, but I have my email address at the end, nicholas.ross@pittsburghpa.gov. And so feel free to send me any additional thoughts. But then after about a week or so, unless we hear any, significant protestations, we'll go ahead and put this into place.
That sounds good. I'm copying your email address into the chat, just if anybody wants to see it. Oh, there it is on the screen too.
Appreciate that.
Do you? I'm just kidding.
You know where I live, everybody. Don't email me. Just track me down. Come on.
Knock on the door, bring a six pack.
Too many of those.
You'll be fine.
I'm on the stoop all night. Don't worry. All right then, Maggie. With that, thank you for hosting. Hirsch, thanks for helping to coordinate. Anything else?
I think just Hirsch and Nick, let's maybe trade emails tomorrow about how to get the recording of this up somewhere where people can link to it.
Sure.
And I will, we'll just kind of post through our stuff about, having like a week or so for people to get their feedback in, if that works for you.
Sounds great.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming out. Appreciate everybody's attendance, and we'll keep you posted on next steps.
Thanks, everybody.
See you around, everybody.
Bye guys, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.